Mysticism is a constellation of distinctive practices, discourses, texts, institutions, traditions, and experiences aimed at human transformation. Variously defined in different traditions, the term mysticism has ancient Greek origins with various historically determined meanings. Derived from the Greek word mu upsilon omega, meaning to conceal, mysticism referred to the biblical, liturgical, spiritual, and contemplative dimensions of early and medieval Christianity. During the early modern period, the definition of mysticism grew to include a broad range of beliefs and ideologies related to extraordinary experiences and states of mind. In modern times, mysticism has acquired a limited definition, with broad applications, as meaning the aim at the union with the Absolute, the Infinite, or God. This limited definition has been applied to a wide range of religious traditions and practices, valuing mystical experience as a key element of mysticism. Since the 1960s, scholars have debated the merits of perennial and constructionist approaches in the scientific research of mystical experiences. The perennial position is now largely dismissed by scholars. Etymology. Mysticism is derived from the Greek mu upsilon omega, meaning I conceal, and its derivative mu upsilon sigma tau iota kappa omicron sigma, mystikos, meaning an initiate. Definitions. Parson warns that what might at times seem to be a straightforward phenomenon exhibiting an unambiguous commonality has become, at least within the academic study of religion, opaque and controversial on multiple levels. The definition, or meaning, of the term mysticism has changed through the ages. Spiritual life and reformation. According to Evelyn Underhill, mysticism is the science or art of the spiritual life. It is the expression of the innate tendency of the human spirit towards complete harmony with the transcendental order, whatever be the theological formula under which that order is understood. Parson stresses the importance of distinguishing between episodic experience and mysticism as a process that, though surely punctuated by moments of visionary, unitive, and transformative encounters, is ultimately inseparable from its embodied relation to a total religious matrix. Liturgy, scripture, worship, virtues, theology, rituals, practice and the arts. According to Gelman, typically, mystics, theistic or not, see the mystical experience as part of a larger undertaking aimed at human transformation and not as the terminus of their efforts. Thus, in general, mysticism would best be thought of as a constellation of distinctive practices, discourses, texts, institutions, traditions, and experiences aimed at human transformation, variously defined in different traditions. McGinn argues that presence is more accurate than union, since not all mystics spoke of union with God, and since many visions and miracles were not necessarily related to union. He also argues that we should speak of consciousness, of God's presence, rather than of experience, since mystical activity is not simply about the sensation of God as an external object, but more broadly about new ways of knowing and loving based on states of awareness in which God becomes present in our inner acts. D.J. Moores too mentions love as a central element. Mysticism, then, is the perception of the universe and all of its seemingly disparate entities existing in a unified whole bound together by love. Related to the idea of presence, instead of experience, is the transformation that occurs through mystical activity. This is why the only test that Christianity has known for determining the authenticity of a mystic and her or his message has been that of personal transformation, both on the mystic's part and, especially, on the part of those whom the mystic has affected. Belzon and Giels also note that mysticism is a way of life and a direct consciousness of the presence of God, or the ground of being, or similar expressions. Enlightenment. Some authors emphasize that mystical experience involves intuitive understanding and the resolution of life problems. According to Larson, a mystical experience is an intuitive understanding and realization of the meaning of existence, an intuitive understanding and realization which is intense, integrating, self-authenticating, liberating, i.e., providing a sense of release from ordinary self-awareness, and subsequently determinative, i.e., a primary criterion for interpreting all other experience, whether cognitive, conative, or affective. And James R. Horn notes, mystical illumination is interpreted as a central visionary experience in a psychological and behavioral process that results in the resolution of a personal or religious problem. This factual, minimal interpretation depicts mysticism as an extreme and intense form of the insight-seeking process that goes in activities such as solving theoretical problems or developing new inventions. Mystical experience in union with the divine. William James, who popularized the use of the term religious experience in his The Varieties of Religious Experience, influenced the understanding of mysticism as a distinctive experience which supplies knowledge of the transcendental. He considered the personal religion to be more fundamental than either theology or ecclesiasticism, and states, "In mystic states we both become one with the Absolute, and we become aware of our oneness. This is the everlasting and triumphant mystical tradition, hardly altered by differences of clime or creed. In Hinduism, in Neoplatonism, in Sufism, in Christian mysticism, in Whitmanism, we find the same recurring note, so that there is about mystical utterances an eternal unanimity which ought to make a critic stop and think, and which bring it about that the mystical classics have, as been said, neither birthday nor native land." According to McLennan, mysticism is the doctrine that special mental states or events allow an understanding of ultimate truths, although it is difficult to differentiate which forms of experience allow such understandings. Mental episodes supporting belief in other kinds of reality are often labeled mystical. Mysticism tends to refer to experiences supporting belief in a cosmic unity rather than the advocation of a particular religious ideology. According to Blakemore and Jennett, mysticism is frequently defined as an experience of direct communion with God, or union with the Absolute. But definitions of mysticism are often imprecise, and usually rely on the presuppositions of the modern study of mysticism, namely, that mystical experiences involve a set of intense and usually individual and private psychological states. Furthermore, mysticism is a phenomenon said to be found in all major religious traditions. History. Early Christianity in the Hellenistic world. Mystical referred to secret religious rituals. The use of the word lacked any direct references to the transcendental. Mystikos was an initiate of a mystery religion. In early Christianity, the term mystikos referred to three dimensions, which soon became intertwined, namely the biblical, the liturgical and the spiritual or contemplative. The biblical dimension refers to hidden or allegorical interpretations of scriptures. The liturgical dimension refers to the liturgical mystery of the Eucharist, the presence of Christ at the Eucharist. The third dimension is the contemplative or experiential knowledge of God. The link between mysticism and the vision of the divine was introduced by the early Church Fathers, who used the term as an adjective, as in mystical theology and mystical contemplation. Medieval meaning. This threefold meaning of mystical continued in the Middle Ages. Under the influence of Pseudo-Dionysius the Areopagite, the mystical theology came to denote the investigation of the allegorical truth of the Bible. Pseudo-Dionysius apophatic theology, or negative theology, exerted a great influence on medieval monastic religiosity. Although it was mostly a male religiosity, since women were not allowed to study, it was influenced by Neoplatonism, and very influential in Eastern Orthodox Christian theology. In Western Christianity it was a countercurrent to the prevailing cataphatic theology or positive theology. It is best known nowadays in the Western world from Meister Eckhart and John of the Cross. Early modern meaning. In the 16th and 17th century, mysticism came to be used as a substantive. This shift was linked to a new discourse, in which science and religion were separated. Luther dismissed the allegorical interpretation of the Bible, and condemned mystical theology, which he saw as more Platonic than Christian. The mystical, as the search for the hidden meaning of texts, became secularized, and also associated with literature, as opposed to science and prose. Science was also distinguished from religion. By the middle of the 17th century, the mystical is increasingly applied exclusively to the religious realm, separating religion and natural philosophy as two distinct approaches to the discovery of the hidden meaning of the universe. The traditional hagiographies and writings of the saints became designated as mystical, shifting from the virtues and miracles to extraordinary experiences and states of mind, thereby creating a newly coined mystical tradition. A new understanding developed of the divine as residing within human, an essence beyond the varieties of religious expressions. Contemporary meaning. In the 19th century, the meaning of mysticism was considerably narrowed. The competition between the perspectives of theology and science resulted in a compromise in which most varieties of what had traditionally been called mysticism were dismissed as merely psychological phenomena, and only one variety, which aimed at union with the absolute, the infinite, or God, and thereby the perception of its essential unity or oneness, was claimed to be genuinely mystical. The historical evidence, however, does not support such a narrow conception of mysticism. Under the influence of perennialism, which was popularized in both the West and the East by Unitarianism, Transcendentalists and Theosophy, mysticism has acquired a broader meaning, in which all sorts of esotericism and religious traditions and practices are joined together. The term mysticism has been extended to comparable phenomena in non-Christian religions, where it influenced Hindu and Buddhist responses to colonialism, resulting in Neo-Vedanta and Buddhist modernism. In the contemporary usage, mysticism has become an umbrella term for all sorts of non-rational worldviews. William Harmless even states that mysticism has become a catch-all for religious weirdness. Within the academic study of religion, the apparent, unambiguous commonality has become opaque and controversial. The term mysticism is being used in different ways in different traditions. Some call to attention the conflation of mysticism and linked terms, such as spirituality and esotericism, and point at the differences between various traditions. Mystical experience. Since the 19th century, mystical experience has evolved as a distinctive concept. It is closely related to mysticism, but lays sole emphasis on the experiential aspect, be it spontaneous or induced by human behavior. Two distinct approaches can be discerned in the study of mystical experience. Perennialists regard those various traditions as pointing to one universal transcendental reality, for which those experiences offer the proof. The perennial position is largely dismissed by scholars, but has lost none of its popularity. Instead, a constructionist approach is favored, which states that mystical experiences are mediated by pre-existing frames of reference. Critics of the term religious experience note that the notion of religious experience, or mystical experience, as marking insight into religious truth is a modern development, and contemporary researchers of mysticism note that mystical experiences are shaped by the concepts which the mystic brings to, and which shape, his experience. What is being experienced is being determined by the expectations and the conceptual background of the mystic.